Hello, students, and anyone else who may be watching from home. This is Mr. Borges, also known as Zanzolo, and today we're going to be starting our next project in Scratch. We have a new button in Canvas right here, and our project's name is Kaboom. I go ahead and click on that button, and then here we go. So this is the video. Well, it will be. The video you're watching right now is right here, and here you are on our Kaboom assignment page. So let's start our next Scratch project. Our Kaboom project will do more with clones and use a variable as a timer. And we have a checklist here, and you should always refer to our checklist for our project. Right before we get into this checklist, though, I'm just going to show you an example of a Kaboom project. So Kaboom is an old Atari 2600 game that many of you may not be familiar with, but the idea is very simple. As you can see, there's a chicken up above. Something is up above, running around back and forth. It's dropping something, right? In the original Kaboom, there was a bad guy up there who was dropping bombs. Right now, I have a chicken dropping eggs. Maybe you're going to have something else. And then I have another character down below. It's running around with a bird nest, right? And it's doing a terrible job of catching the eggs right now. Now, if they do catch the eggs, come on, chicken hasn't dropped an egg in forever. There we go. Right? You can see that the eggs are changed their costumes, right? And then when the time is up, there was a timer down here in the bottom right-hand corner. When the time is up, we're going to start this again to draw your attention to. It's counting down the whole time, right? I also want to show you, I want to try to catch it. If you can see if my sprite, if the legs of the sprite touch the egg, that does not count as a point. And I'm doing a bad job on purpose, and you can see. If the nest touches the egg hatches and you get 1 point. If the guy, that was a good one, really showing it. If the guy touches the egg, I don't get a point, and the poor egg doesn't hatch. Right, and that bird noise is kind of annoying. I might get rid of that. All right, so that's the idea behind this project. In your project, you are going to have a sprite that drops stuff. I used the chicken. It's going to randomly check directions. I want you to see that this chicken is randomly changing directions, right? It doesn't just walk back and forth. Right? Occasionally, we'll make a random direction change, and your project's going to do that too. Okay, the sprite that has clones that get dropped. Now, in my project, that was an egg. And the original Kaboom, that was a bomb. Right? The clones should change costumes. Right? In my project, the egg hatches. In the original project, the bomb exploded. Right? Something happens with the thing that drops. Right? If you missed it, it would blow up. In my case, if I catch it, it hatches. Right? But I do want to see your thing that drops change costumes. And then hide at the appropriate time. So it's hidden, then it's showing, and then it hides again. Okay, and then those will be clones that then delete themselves when they're no longer needed. So you'll be managing your clones. I don't want to see having infinite many clones down here on the bottom of the screen because you can't have infinity. If you have more than 300 or so, they'll stop. They'll stop hatching and they leg out people's computers and stuff. So delete them when you're not needing them anymore. Okay, number 3, you're going to have a sprite that the player controls. Now I'm using my mouse to control this hip-hop character. I don't know what his name is. I forgot. Champ, I think his name is. And separately, I have another sprite that's the nest that has separate instructions to do the same kind of moving. That's how I can do one thing if you're touching the nest, right? But it's a separate sprite so that here, if I get the guy, if it just hits his legs there, like you could just see, it doesn't hatch the egg. It's because the guy is a separate sprite from the nest. And I can check if they're touching those two things separately. Okay, then you're going to have 2 variables that reset themselves at the beginning of the project. One for the score. You can see my score right now, it's 5. When I click the green flag, it resets back to 0. And then the timer. Right now it's 29. When I click the flag, it resets back to 30. So both those will reset, and your game will stop when you run out of time, right? My chicken says game over and stops laying eggs. So they can't just keep playing after the game is over. Then you're going to have a better title than Untitled, some instructions, and then submit it to Canvas. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go ahead and launch Scratch, and we're going to go ahead and make a project like this. Okay, so I could use Scratchcat if I wanted to. In this case, I'm not using Scratchcat. So I drew a backdrop, and drawing a backdrop takes a little while. And so I don't think I want to make drawing the backdrop part of what I do in this video, but I will just briefly give you an idea of what I did. I selected the color blue, and I drew some top part that was blue. I selected the color green, and I drew some bottom part that was green, right? And that was going to be my grass. And it doesn't matter if those go off the edge a little bit or if they're even touching a little bit, because I was going to have my fence coming all across here, right? And so for the fence, I just got my square tool again, and I grabbed a color that was close to what I wanted. I don't know, kind of brownish or something. And then what I did was I drew one board for my fence, put it where I wanted it to go. Here, I'll zoom out a little bit so I can see what's going on. Put it where I want it to go. See, this white square is the stage. My blue and green go way off the stage. So I'm only going to go to the edge of the stage here, something like that. That's what I'm going for. Room for the chicken to run around the top, room for my guy to run around the bottom. And then what I did was I just duplicated these. So copy that rectangle and then paste it in again. And I stuck it over here somewhere. And then I did something like that again. Pasted it in, pasted it in, pasted it in. You don't have to worry about making it perfect. Kind of looks, to me, it looks more like a real fence if it's not perfect. But that's up to you. And I don't want this to take forever, so I'm just going to put them wherever. Not spend any amount of time thinking about exactly where they're going. So it's something like this, and you could definitely do a nicer job and spend more time making your fence exactly the way that you want it. Right. Then I used a chicken. You could definitely use something else. Under animals, I think it's actually hen. Right, there she is, and I'll make it a little bit smaller and put her where I want her to go, up on top of the fence here. Then I need something to get dropped, another sprite. So I think for this one I used eggs, or hatchling I think is the one I used. And it already has the costumes of the hatching egg, so that's fine. It's a little bigger than I want, so I also made that one smaller. Okay, and then we're going to worry about exactly where it goes and what it does later. Then I had another sprite that I used as my guy. I think for that one I used Champ was his name. Champ, there he goes. Just because he had his arms up, like he was ready to carry the nest around. I think that's why I picked him. Right, so maybe that's too big. I don't know. You're gonna have to work out the size of your own things for your own self. And then I had a nest that he was carrying, and I could have drawn the nest in his hands right here, but then the nest and the guy would be the same sprite. Then I couldn't check separately, if the egg was touching the nest, because if it touched this guy's foot, I don't want you to get a point for that. So the nest has to be a separate thing. I went ahead and made it a separate sprite. And for this one, I went out on the internet, I found some picture of a transparent bird nest that was going to work for me. I saved this and uploaded it to Scratch. If you can't find one that's already transparent, you can try using that website remove.bg that we've used in class before to remove the background. Right, so here we go, and I get my nest. Oh, my nest is way, way, way too big, but that's fine. Right, I'm going to shrink it down to be closer to the size that I want. Something like that. I'm going to get it close to where I want. Something like that, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we want to be able to control Champ with the mouse and the nest with the mouse also. So let's go to Champ. We're going to go to Code. We're going to say when the green flag is clicked, we want to forever and ever and ever move. I'll zoom in a little bit. We want to change the X position this way, back and forth. We want to change Champ's X position to match the mouse pointer's X position, but we don't want to change the Y. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to set over and over and over, set Champ to have a new X position. And I know a lot of my students get mixed up about this. They're like, well, I think I want to change X, so shouldn't I use change X? And the problem is that change X doesn't decide what your new X position is. It takes your old X position and changes it a little bit. We don't really want to keep figuring out what our old X position was and changing it a little bit. We just want to decide where is it going to be now. And And that's why we actually want to use set x for this. And what are we going to set x to? We're going to set it to the x of the mouse pointer. Well, there's a block right here for that. It tells you what the position of that mouse pointer is. I can stick that in there. So when I click the green flag now, as you can see, as I move the mouse around, I can move it up and down, and Champ doesn't do anything. But when I move it side to side, Champ changes its x to match the mouse pointer's x. And I can use that kind of like a roller paddle game or something. I can move back and forth this way. Now I want the nest to do the exact same thing as that. So I'm just going to take the same code and drop it in there for the nest, right? Now it's not running right now because I haven't clicked the green flag yet. So I click stop and then click play, and then there you go. So now I have what looks like one piece, right? Champ and the nest moving together, but they're two separate sprites. So I'm going to be able to check if the egg is touching the nest and not give the player any credit if Champ is touching the egg. That doesn't matter, right? The player's got to get the egg to go into the nest, not have Champ accidentally run over it with his belt buckle or something. Okay, so that's it for that. Now we can also get the hen moving. So similarly, when the green flag is clicked, the hen's going to do something over and over and over forever. What is she going to do? She's going to, just like, this is a lot like dodgeball, actually. We're going to have them move. And then if they're on the edge, we're going to have them bounce. So that's pretty good, but we don't want them to flip upside down like they just did right there. So we're also going to set the rotation style once at the beginning to be left or right. So now the chicken does the same thing, but doesn't bounce up and down, just bounces left and right. So that is pretty good. Now we need to have a way for them to randomly change their direction. And so there's more than one way to do this, but one way to do this, whenever we want to do something random, is to pick a random number. So what we can do is inside of our forever loop, we can check over and over and over something that happens. It's kind of like rolling a dice. So we can roll a die over and over and over and over, and then check if the outcome of that die, if the answer that we got, roll a die that has 10 sides, right? Or you're used to probably a die that has 6 sides. So you can pick a random number between 1 and 6. And if you get, you're never going to get 50, right? If you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, you just pick one of them. If you get 1, then we're going to say, right? So if random number, when you roll a die, equals 1, then we'll have the chicken change direction. We can have the chicken do a 180, which will have it face back the other way. So here now we can run this, and you can see if I click it in the middle, I'm just going to have the chicken do a 180 in the middle. Go the other way. Go the other way, go the other way, go the other way, go the other way. See, I can make the chicken go the other way whenever I want. We're going to have it do that sort of randomly. We're going to keep rolling a die. You're not going to get 1 that much of the time. But, every once in a while you'll get a 1, and then you're going to change direction. Now, the computer's going to do all this pretty fast. And so if we only do from 1 to 6, the chicken's going to be changing directions like crazy. So a 6-sided die is kind of not really enough sides to really get as much randomness as we would. I mean, maybe you like that, but I think the chicken looks like it's just spazzing out or getting dizzy or something to me. So I think a 6-sided die is not enough sides. I don't know if you've seen in Dungeons and Dragons, sometimes they have a 20-sided die. And I think that would work a little bit better, right? And actually, that's pretty good. But if you think that that's still too much switching back and forth, you can just go higher, right? We don't have to have an actual physical die. We could say, well, if we had a 50-sided die, it would be something like this. It still only counts when you roll a 1, or we could change this number. I hope you get that. I could change this to anything between 1 and 50, 25. It still doesn't matter. Every time you roll it, you get like a 1 in 50 chance to get a 25. You get a 1 in 50 chance to get a 14. You get a 1 in 50 chance to get a 1. There's only putting one number in here. Depends on this number, right? Right, there's a 1 in 50 chance that the chicken's going to flip the other way. And the computer's checking that as fast as it can, and sometimes it does flip the other way. Now, you might want more flipping. You might want less flipping than that. That's going to be up to you. Right, so you're going to have a different number probably than me in your project, and that's fine. Okay, then there's something else that we're going to do sort of randomly. Right, and so I'm going to copy this part right here. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to lay an egg. Right? Or drop a bomb, or whatever you're going to do in your project. So for this one, I want it to drop eggs a lot more often than it just switches places. Maybe 1 in 6 is the right answer for this. But we're not going to change directions. We're going to do something. We're going to clone the hatchling. Now the hatchling, right? Before, when we used create clone, it was always create clone of myself. And I actually never even talked about other clones you could make until now. So, right, create clone of myself is what we did before. But here what we're going to do is we're going to have the hen control when the hatchling, when the egg makes copies of itself. So we're going to say create a clone of the hatchling. It's still going to go inside of our loop, right? Now I could just run it right now, but you won't see anything happen because the hatchling's always in the same place and the clones will always be in the same place. And so it will start making tons of clones there. I mean, I could run it. It's starting to make tons of clones that are already right now, but you can't see them doing anything because they're all right on top of each other. And so that's kind of boring. So what we're going to do is, right, 'cause there's really only one hatchling there. Our program can make copies, but what we're going to do is we're going to have the hatchling, when the green flag is clicked, we're going to have the egg always go to the hen. Go to the hen. There we go. So now you can see, since the hatchling is always going to random places, you can see that we're getting lots of different eggs all over the place. Now they're never deleting each other and they're not doing anything except just getting born as clones. So that's why they're just sitting there like that. What we want to do is more interesting than this. So we're going to write instructions now for the hatchling, right? So the hatchling is going to get created. Maybe that was too many eggs. Maybe that's not enough. You can control this in the same way, right? We're rolling a 6-sided die to find out when we're going to get a egg. Maybe I need to try an 8-sided die. Maybe I need to try a 20-sided die. You're going to experiment around with that, right? So now I'm going to get less eggs than what I was getting before, right? Maybe that's not enough. I don't know, right? I mean, you could definitely say, let's flip a coin and as fast as you can. And you can see when I do that, I get tons of eggs, and maybe that's too many, right? So you're going to decide that. I think 1 in 8's about right for my project. We'll play with it later. Okay, so what are the eggs going to do when they get born as a clone? So, right, we haven't talked about clones that much, and it was a while ago. So when the clones show up, we're going to write instructions for the clones separately. So when I start as a clone, we want the clone to move down, just like when we rained clones in our other project. So we're going to tell the clone's going to start up here where the hen is, right? This bit of code makes that happen. Then we're going to change the Y direction, the up and down direction of the clone. We're going to move in that Y direction. And this time we actually do want to see where we were and move down a little bit, and then see where we were and move down a little bit, and see where we were and move down a little bit. This time we really are changing Y, not just making up a brand new place for it to go. So we want to change Y by negative, 5. Right, and we're going to repeat that a bunch of times. How many times? Well, I don't know. Try it out. So that's not enough. You can see it's starting to move down, but it's not enough times. So we only move like this far. That's 10. So this would be like what, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60? Let's just try 60 and see what happens. There we go. And something about that looks about right to me. And if you want to fall off the screen, maybe 70 would have been the right answer, maybe 65. I don't know. You're going to try out stuff to get what you want so that it works for you. Yeah, that looks about right for what I was going for. Okay, so right, that is pretty good. Then what we want to do is once the eggs do get down to, I know nothing happens if I try to catch them yet, but once the eggs get down to the bottom, that's when we have repeated our 65 moves. Move down, move down, move down, move down, move down. So once they do get to the bottom, once we're done doing this, we do want them to just delete themselves. You can already see they're just piling up on the bottom there. When we get to the bottom, please delete yourself as a clone. So now when we run this, you'll see they get to the bottom and then they delete themselves. So they don't just pile up on the bottom. If I ever get more than 300, I won't be able to make more. Maybe that's too many chicken eggs now that I'm looking at it. It looks kind of crazy, but that's up to you. Maybe that's a perfect amount. I don't know. This chicken's going crazy. Anyways, so now what we can do is write the bit of code that checks if the nest is touching the egg. right? And so let's have the egg. The egg's already been in charge of what it's doing and how it's moving and when it's deleting itself. So let's also have the egg be in charge if it's touching the nest, because then the egg will be able to delete itself. We could have the nest be in charge of checking this, but then the nest can't delete the eggs though. So the nest would have to send a message to the egg telling them to delete themselves. Anyway, let's just have the clones be in charge of that. Then the clones could delete their individual selves. So we're going to check if touching nest. Oh, and we're going to put that inside the loop. We need to keep checking that over and over and over all the time. So if touching nest, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to get a point. Okay, we need a variable to keep track of that. So we go to variables. I'm going to make a variable. I'm going to name it score. And we're going to have to reset the score. So when the project first starts out, we're going to set the score to 0. It's our job, right? Programmers have to set their initial conditions. So I'm going to set this to 0. I'm just going to move this down here so it's not blocking the chicken. I don't think it's really blocking anything if it's down here. And so what are we going to do? We're going to keep checking if this is an instruction for the egg, if it's touching the nest. If it is touching the nest, then we want to change score by 1. And then we can test that out and make sure it's working. And it doesn't seem like anything is happening, is it? So why not? Why is that not doing anything? Well, that's a good question. So go ahead and stop this and start it over again. So why, oh why, when I start as a clone, if touching the nest, then change score by 1. My score is actually changing like crazy. Okay, that's what's going on. My score, I'm not having a problem with the score changing. The score's changing too much. And the reason why is because the eggs aren't deleting themselves. So like, here, watch. This is what's going on. I'm just going to touch one egg only. So much points I got, like 17. It's not supposed to work that way. So what we need to do is after we get our point, we need to also delete the egg. Of course. There we go. Get your point, delete that egg. Now when we run this, there we go, right? So I'm getting only 1 point per egg, 1 point per egg, 1 point per egg, 1 point per egg. That's pretty good and can run around trying to catch them all. So that's the idea. That's the big idea of Kaboom, actually. Then this doesn't just supposed to just go on forever. There's supposed to be some kind of a time limit or something that decides that your game is over. So, and it could be in the Kaboom game, if you missed a bomb, the game was over, right? And you could write instructions like that. You could make maybe a different color here at the very bottom. And you could say, hey, if the hatchling is ever touching that color red, just like we did in the maze project, if the egg is ever touching that color red, stop all, the game's over, right? And you could, just like you did in dodgeball, you could let the player know that the game was over. That's a good idea. But you could maybe end the game if you miss a single one. And my game's more generous than that, I guess. You can miss some if you want. You just don't get points. But then we needed some kind of way to end the game. And so for that, we're going to add a timer. And I want you to add a timer to your game also, even if you find other ways to end the game. So we're going to make a variable. You could call it time or timer or something like that. And we need to, just like our other project, we need to initialize our variable. So I'm going to set time to what I want it to start out with. Well, how much time do you want to give people? Right? I'm just going to put 30 seconds, but that might not be the right answer for your project. Right? Then what I'm going to do is, right, I'm just going to do that. I think the way to do that is to create a new, to control time and not have it lag anything else out. We're going to make a separate, let's just, actually, we could have put this score 0 anywhere we wanted, but let's just, to keep time totally separate, let's make a new when the green flag is clicked. This isn't 100% necessary, but I'm doing this to try to help you keep things straight in your mind, right? So, right, what we're going to do is we're going to set the time to 30, and then forever we're going to change time by -1. Change time by -1. And then what we're going to do is, And then what we're going to do is we're going to check if time equals 0. So if time equals 0, that's when we're supposed to stop the project. So if time equals 0, then that's when we could stop. Right? And so maybe we stop other scripts in this sprite. Or we could just stop all at that point. Okay, so then what's going to happen is, and if we try to run this, you're going to see this doesn't last for 30 seconds. Watch my time. Starts at 30, zip, goes down to 0 as fast as it can. Zip, it goes down to 0. Right? What we need to do is we need to slow this down so that there's 1 second delay between each change to the time. Yeah, the change is supposed to change. Time goes down by -1, but then we need to wait a second before we do it again, right? And that's the big idea. So now it's going to start out 29, 28, 27. And you can see my time seems like it's starting at 29. Whoopsie. I should have checked the time first, then waited for a second while it was still 30, then changed it to 29, right? So then you try it out. There we go. Starts out at 30. 29, 28, 27. It's going to count down that way. Character's going to run around catching bombs or eggs or money or whatever it is that you're catching, Lucky Charms pieces or whatever. And then once you do run out of time, then you're not going to be able to continue playing anymore. So let's go ahead and let that running, but I'm thinking already about the next piece that we're going to add, and that is that, and I want you to do this, we're going to have the egg or the bomb or whatever else change costumes. So it's going to be the end, right? So I got 87 points. Okay. Now what we're going to do is, right, add a little bit more right here. This is where, for the egg, if touching the nest, we're changing the score by 1, we're deleting the clone. Before we delete the clone, I want to change the costume. And I have different costumes for the hatchling that came with different costumes. So here's costume B, here's costume C. So what we're going to do is when we change the score as 1, we're also going to switch the costume B. And I want to be able to see that happen, so I'm going to put in a slight delay of time right here. I don't know, maybe like 0.2 of a second or something. You experiment with that yourself. Then I'm going to add another change of costume and another delay because I want to be able to see that also. I want to be able to see this change before we delete the clone, so I have to put this extra little wait block in here. All right, so change the costume, wait, change the costume, wait, and then delete the clone. But these waits are very small. And you're able to see that, right, when the nest touches the egg, it does its little animation, right, of the hatching chicken or chick or whatever. Now that chick, I think, is a little bit high. It looks like that most of them are hatching a little bit high. When I'm just holding still, you can see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one extra piece. This isn't necessary, but I just want to show you. I'm going to change Y by some negative amount, by like maybe move the egg in the negative Y direction by a little bit, so that when I change the score by 1, also move the egg down a little bit. So I try that out. That seems about right. Maybe it should have even went a little bit more, right? 15 maybe, I don't know. 20. Try stuff. All right, seems about right to me. There we go. All right. Then what you're going to do is you're going to, right, make sure I'm signed out right now, right? So if that happens to you, you should be able to just safely sign in without losing any of your progress. Okay, there we go. Now what I'm going to do is get myself a better title than Untitled. Now this is my Kaboom project, so I'm just going to call it Kaboom. You're going to share your project, and then you're going to make sure, see, that's funny. How come my title, there's my title, right? So you're going to write some instructions for it here, share your project, and then you're going to copy. So make sure you have some instructions, right? And this project does need a little bit of instructions, right? Use your mouse to move the nest and catch the eggs, or whatever it is that you're doing in your project that's going to be different, right? Okay. Then we're going to copy the link for this project, go back to Canvas, right? And so this project's not published, so you can't actually see it. I think my module is not published. Yeah. Bum, ba-dum, bum. So student view can't see the module. There we go. Share the module. There we go. Now, if I go to student view, everybody already knows how to turn their project in, probably right. So you're going to click submit assignment, come down here, do a right click and paste your project URL in there. Leave me a comment if you want to, then click submit assignment one more time. Make sure it throws candy and confetti or whatever that was and tells you that it's submitted right here. So if it doesn't do that, you are not done. All right, folks, so that's what's up with Kaboom Project. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye.